What's going on, guys? It's your boy Scrub here, back again with another video. Hope you guys are having a great day. I know I am, and today we're going to be doing another little collection of scary, spooky stories, so sit back, relax, and enjoy. Up until my mid-20s, I would have told you that there's no such thing as ghosts. Most things that people say I think is just their imagination or wishful thinking. Now, I don't know, I just don't know anymore. When I was in my 20s and newly married, my spouse and I moved for his job. We needed to find a place to live pretty quick, and we lucked into the perfect house. It was old, and in its previous life, it had been someone's beach cottage, which I loved. What's better than living in a resort town, close enough to walk to the beach? Plus, it wasn't in a resort area. It was on the back half of someone's property with one road in and out, with lots of trees and shade. Very quiet, no other people around, and because the house was originally a weekend cottage, it was one big room with a small addition to one side that contained a kitchen, bath, and then another addition off the back that had a bedroom. The big room, though, was awesome. Windows on all three sides with a nice breeze most of the time, a fireplace, and lots of open area. The only thing that kind of pinged my radar was the landlord. When we rented, he was overly insistent that we sign a year lease and we couldn't break it for any reason. No matter what, we needed to pay out the lease, whether we lived in the house or not. I thought that was a little weird, the way he kept repeating that over and over, because he wanted to make absolutely sure that we understood. But it didn't really register at the time. Other than that, I was a bit worried that maybe there were troublemakers or noisy parties on the beach or something, but he assured us that it was a very quiet neighborhood. But he repeated again that we couldn't break the lease. I worked a 9-to-5 job and my spouse worked 12-hour on and off shifts, so there were lots of times I'd be home by myself. The first month or two was fine. I liked the house, I liked the neighborhood, I liked the beach. I'm mostly a homebody, so when the spouse was at work, I would stay at home reading or watching a little TV or cooking. I'd always wanted to learn to knit, so I'd bought some yarn and started teaching myself. Then, sometime around the third month, I started to get a very strong feeling that someone would stand behind me while I was reading. You know, like looking over my shoulder. It only happened when I was alone in the house, and only when I was in the main room. Without thinking about it too much, I started sitting places where my back was to the wall or reading in the bedroom. When I went to bed at night, I started closing the door between the bedroom and the rest of the house. I felt safe in the bedroom. Sometimes, when I fell asleep in front of the TV late at night, I'd wake up to catch someone standing in front of the fireplace, just out of the corner of my eye. I thought I needed to stop dreaming so much, but I started to stay in the bedroom, after dark with the door shut. Things started to not be where I put them in the big room, and I got kinda irritated with my spouse for messing with my stuff. I wasted 5 to 10 minutes almost every day looking for my handbag or my car keys. Then one day, I came home after work and I found my knitting yarn wrapped and tangled around all the furniture in the big room. And I don't mean just a little bit. I mean the yarn was strung between couches, wrapped around the legs of chairs, and I told myself that my spouse was playing a trick on me and I cleaned it up. Then I decided I wouldn't mention it to him, just to see how long it took him to come clean. But he never did. I moved my knitting to the bedroom. My sister came to visit for a long weekend because I'd gushed so much about our lovely beach house that she wanted to come visit and see the beach. She came for a 4-day weekend and she slept on the pull-out sofa in the big room. After the first night, she told us the sofa wasn't very comfortable and she thought she was coming down with something, so she changed her travel arrangements and was leaving that afternoon. She seemed agitated but wouldn't talk about it, and a few days after she went home, she called me and started the conversations with, "I know you don't believe in ghosts and maybe I'm just being stupid." My heart dropped. I thought I was the only one, and I was being so stoic and pretending I never saw or heard anything. She went on to tell me after she went to sleep that night in the big room, noises woke her up in the middle of the night. She thought it was one of us, but no one was there. Then, while she was sitting in the bed looking around, the windows started opening and closing. It just kind of went around the room. One window opened and closed, and the one next to that, then the next one, and the next one. And then she heard footsteps walking straight towards her, but no one was there. The footsteps walked right up to the bed where she was sitting, over the bed, and continued across the room and out the side door into the kitchen area. She said she ran out the front door and spent the rest of the night on the front porch. She came back inside when the sun came up, waited for us to wake up, and made excuses to go home. She didn't want to spend another night there. She said, "I know you won't believe me. That's okay, but I'm not sleeping there again." I told myself that my sister had always been a little bit nutty about stuff like that, so knowing the house was old, she probably just had a very vivid dream, and I kept telling myself that. A few weeks after, though, when I'd stopped jumping at every stray noise, I woke up one Sunday morning and went to cook a leisurely breakfast for me and the spouse. And y'all, I still don't know how to explain this, but I opened the kitchen cabinets to get the dishes out and start cooking, and all of the dishes were rearranged. Not messy, not tumbled about. They were all very neat and orderly, but everything was on the wrong shelf. The shelf that normally held glasses now had plates stacked on them. The shelves that normally held bowls now had glasses on them. My first thought was that someone had been in the house during the night, but when I checked all the locks, they were still locked. We didn't know many people, and I couldn't think of anyone who would pull a trick like that. Besides, there was so much stuff moved that no one could do it quietly without disturbing people in the next room. So I did what any half-crazed, scared person would do. I pretended it never happened. I pretended that I always kept the glasses on that shelf, and this was nothing strange about having all the plates on this shelf. I sure as hell wasn't moving anything back because I didn't want to see what would happen if I did. I cooked breakfast and went on with my day, and later that afternoon I told my spouse I wasn't comfortable here anymore, and asked if we could find somewhere else to live. Amazingly enough, my spouse never asked me why. He simply said it was probably a good idea and let's find a place quick, and we moved out. We called the landlord after we'd already packed and moved out the furniture, and he came to pick up the keys, and he not once asked why we were moving. In fact, he wouldn't even look us in the eyes. He just kept looking at the ground, and we agreed to keep paying the rent until he could get new tenants. Months later, I asked my spouse if he ever felt anything strange there, and he said, yeah, that wasn't a good house. I'm glad we moved, and we never talked about it again. I was home alone for the weekend. My parents had a memory foam mattress on their bed, so it was infinitely more comfortable than mine, and I decided to sleep in their bedroom and enjoy that comfy bed on night one. Even though I knew they hated it when one of us kids would do that, I settled down to sleep and felt unsettled. I have anxiety and told myself I was feeling off because of my new surroundings, and that I was super comfy and once I fell asleep I'd be fine. I turned on the TV and watched some old cartoons. Once I was ready to sleep though, I turned off the TV and put the remote on the nightstand by my bed. I rolled over and did my best to fight the unsettled feeling I had. I woke up to the light from the TV shining on my face and the cartoons playing again. I was confused, but whatever. I probably just fell asleep and never turned off the TV. I glanced at my phone and it was only about 45 minutes after I went to bed, so I just turned off the TV again and set the remote on the dresser. I fell back asleep pretty easily because I was groggy already, and being half asleep was woken up by a loud conversation. As I woke up more and more, I became disturbingly aware that the TV was back on. I rolled over to face it, and it was playing a scene where a bunch of people were sitting around a table talking about something. One of the first things I realized after I woke up was that the TV volume was incredibly loud, and I had put it pretty quiet before I fell asleep. I watched it for a minute, confused about how it was back on and what it was playing since it wasn't the same channel before I fell asleep. I reached through a remote and my hand touched the solid wood of the dresser. Telltale horror movie music starts playing softly in the background of the scene as it pans around the room, and I'm fully awake, feeling around the floor through the remote that I must have simply knocked off the stand in my sleep. I'm starting to shit bricks now due to the insanely loud, suspenseful music and the TV turning on by itself on a different channel. I decide I absolutely have to turn on the lights, so I jump out of bed and take a straight line from where I was standing to where the light switch was. I make a weird noise between a yelp and a cry and flick on the lights, grabbing the remote, turning down the volume, and I check to see what show was playing, and it was an old horror movie playing on a movie channel. I bug out of the room as fast as I can be and just leave the TV on in superstition. Who am I to judge if someone else is trying to enjoy an empty house with me? It took me a long time to fall asleep in my own bed that night. I asked my parents if they ever had problems with the TV turning on randomly, and they looked at me like I was stupid, and I never tried to sleep in that room again. When I was together with my ex, I used to hang around her old house all the time. Between her bedroom and the kitchen, there was a large living room with a cushioned sofa and TV. You had to walk between the two to get to either side of the house, and one late winter evening, we were watching a movie in her room and I went to get water. On the way, I felt uneasy and kinda stressed, but I'm a grounded dude, so I just shook it off, got the water, and started walking back. On the way back, I passed the sofa and my ex was sitting there, her hair towards me so that I couldn't see her face. I remember her light brown, golden curls and her thin neck and her pale skin so perfectly without any fault. I stopped and started walking up to her, but as I did, she kinda slid to the side and her body was hidden by the back of the sofa. I walked up to the sofa and was gonna tickle her or something. It's important to note that I didn't think anything was wrong at this point, it was just playful teasing. And as I looked down into the sofa and all the pillows it had, I saw her body buried beneath the pillows in a blanket. It was her, and I figured she just made a makeshift fort. And to this day, I can't for the life of me understand why I didn't realize that something was weird, because there's no way a person could make a fort in 4 seconds. Anyways, I put down my hand, and just like that, she vanished. I can't remember if I blinked or focused my eyes on something else, but my hand only met cold woolen cloth underneath the pillows. There was nothing there. In shock and thinking I was crazy, I walked back into her room and said nothing about it and let it go during the movie. It all hit me a few months later when she was showing me old photos of her playing as a child with her grandmother holding her. The grandmother was a slender, thin-necked, pale woman with the same light brown golden locks as my girl. It was her that I had walked up to. It was her that I saw beneath the pillows. My heart sunk, and I will never forget how her eyes looked through the photo album at me. I have no clue to this day why it happened. I never told anyone, but think about it occasionally. Sometimes it feels as if she was playing with me, maybe measuring the guy who was dating her granddaughter. Some other days, especially when I was out fishing with a friend, it felt like I was lured towards her, like she knew exactly what she was doing. When I was about 5, my family moved to a different home due to my father's changing work. It was built in the 60s, I believe, and it was a fairly long house. My bedroom at my previous house was at the end of a decent-sized hole, and my only request at that age was that our new house had the same setup so I would be happy. And it did. The hallway was much longer, and I could run as fast as I wanted from my room, straight into the living room, turn left in the kitchen, and then turn right into the den, which was a garage that had been converted into this huge room. I remember being very excited. The first sighting happened one evening while I was sitting on a couch in the living room. Something made me want to look over and down the hall instead of watching TV, and I did. And there was a woman stepping out of my parents' room. A complete shadow, but I could see how her hair curled up near her shoulders, like it was in the 50s from her silhouette. She was wearing a sundress, but she was tall. She just stood there for the longest time and then walked into my room. My parents seemed weirded out when I told them, but kind of brushed it off. And I saw the exact thing happen a second time a year later. Both times, I don't even remember being scared, more confused. But then the night terrors started, which is a story in and of itself. The things I would see and hear were terrifying, and as I got older, we would hear knocking on the wall of my bedroom at 3 a.m., as if on cue. The basement was as long as the house, and the stairs would bring you down in the middle, and we always felt like we were being watched down there. And worse, the light under the den portion didn't work properly, so there was a dark half and a lit half. Large black metal beams supporting it lined the middle of it, and many nights we could hear what sounded like someone tapping a wrench against them over and over. My parents even heard it, and my dad would go down and tell us nothing looked out of place. Crap hit the fan though when my mom was home alone one day, dog sitting for our neighbors. She said something started trying to open the basement door, and the dog she was watching started flipping its crap and barking at the door. We usually kept the light on in the stairwell, and we could see a shadow under the door as people walked up. And she swore there was no shadow, and it grew so violent she tore out into the front yard and waited for my dad to get home. At which point, he goes, with pistol in hand, and checked it out, and found every door to be locked. There was no way someone got in. It wasn't until years later our neighbor on the other side started getting to know my parents, and she mentioned that the older woman originally lived there and the basement would flood a lot. She saw them wheeling a body out of the back of the house, and when she asked the paramedics what happened, they said it was like she fell down the stairs and drowned at the bottom. This put my whole family in a state of dread, and even the neighbor seemed unnerved when we told her about the things going on. I literally got used to feeling like I was being watched, and the day we moved and started sleeping in my new house, I couldn't believe how at ease I felt after the first night. Okay, I haven't told anyone this story since I was a kid, because when I told my cousins that it was happening, it scared them really bad, and I got a second-only whooping with my belt by my dad. As an adult, I don't mention it because I just don't want people to know what was going on, and I don't want other adults to think I'm nuts. When I was in second grade, I woke up one summer night, dead of night, to a woman floating through my bedroom window. I wasn't scared though. I sat up and asked, "What are you doing here?" And I remember she answered me, but oddly enough, the next morning I couldn't remember what she said or what her voice sounded like. I couldn't even remember what she looked like. So I said to her, in true 8-year-old fashion, "Well, you better get going, because my dad might wake up and he'll be mad." And she slipped out my already cracked bedroom door and I went back to sleep. Sounds like sleep paralysis, right? But you're wrong. The next day, I was really excited that I had my fairy godmother, and I named her Crystal. And I thought in my head, please come back and wake me up at dawn so we can talk. And I'm not messing with you. The next morning, just as it's getting light outside, I hear someone whispering my name. And I realized it was real and she's a ghost, and I froze. I stayed as still as I could, not able to breathe, and prayed as hard as I could. Go away, go away, go away. I could feel her right by my head, and as I'm typing this, I'm starting to cry. Okay, happened once. Coincidence, right? Nope. Every time I would get brave and say out loud to her before going to my bed, alright, this time I won't get scared. She would come, whispering my names, and I would almost crap my pants in fear and never open my eyes. So at this point, I'm thinking it still could be night terrors, right? I mean, our eyes have receptors sensitive to light, and this is causing me to wake up at dawn and hallucinate. But this is where it gets real. Next summer, I tell a friend that this is going on while we're camping, and she doesn't believe me, and says to me, alright, ask her to come tonight. We're sleeping in the same tent, and my friend wants to see it for herself. And at dawn, I hear her calling my friend and I's names too. We don't move, she leaves, and my friend says she heard it too, freaks out and tells her parents crying, and I get in trouble for scaring her kids with ghost stories. When I was 16, I started dating my very first boyfriend. The first time I went to his house, we were hanging out in his room, and for whatever reason, I decided to take off my shoes and leave them there when we went back downstairs. A couple hours go by and his dad offered to drive me home, and I agreed and went upstairs to grab my shoes. However, right before I went to step over the threshold to his room, I stopped short. I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden I felt a huge sense of dread. I felt like something was warning me that they didn't want me there. I went back downstairs and told my boyfriend I needed him to get my shoes. When he asked why, I told him what happened, expecting them to laugh. And his mom, who was listening, went white and her jaw dropped. My boyfriend looked frightened and said, "Oh God, it's happening again." At this point, I'm confused, and he explained that he has visions, him and his brother, about how strangers could never go into his bedroom for the same reasons I had. They eventually had to get the room blessed by a priest, which seemed to make it stop for a while. This was reoccurring throughout the entire time. He would call me in the middle of the night hysterically because he saw a stranger peering into the bedroom in the middle of the night. Or he'd hear unexplainable noises while his dog went crazy and barked at the hallway for hours. One time I saw his dad pass by me twice from the same direction, seconds apart in the middle of the night. When I was 10, I was at my best friend Tyler's house. His family lived in a very nice house on a mountain in Georgia. Tyler always told me about the scary stuff happening there, like how he would see eyes, his TV would turn off while watching it, and you would hear drilling sounds and metal banging, doors opening, all the classic ghost stuff. And I never believed them until this one time. We were in his hot tub for like an hour when suddenly I feel the most overwhelming feeling to get out. In that exact moment, Tyler looks at me and says, "We need to get out now," and there's a fear in his voice. We jump out and dry off and go inside, and as we go in, he locks the door and tries to open it to make sure it's locked. So we start going towards the big movie area that's near the back door to watch Napoleon Dynamite, and out of nowhere, we're hit by the fear again. We smell what smells like rotten animals, and his DVD rack falls over, and all the movies start flying off, and at the same time, the back door flew open. Needless to say, we hauled it to his other movie room and made a fort of beanbags and chairs to defend ourselves from the paranormal enemy. And from that moment on, I believed in ghosts. Alright guys, that's going to do it for the video. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, be sure to press the like button, comment down below, all that good stuff. Subscribe if you're new, and use code SCRUBBY at the G Fuel checkout. Don't get anyone pregnant. If you do, make sure they're hot, and I'll see you guys next time. I'm out. Peace.